This is Pastor Roger L. Green, Sr., pastor of the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. We're welcoming you to our worship services on Sunday morning. Sunday school begin at 8 a.m. Worship services begin at 9 a.m. Come and grow with us, a place of faith, family, and fellowship. We would love to have you. Come see us Sunday morning. We'll see you there. Be blessed.
Hey, did you know Long's Products is a family-owned janitorial supply with mops, brooms, trash bags, and they even have food service disposables, carry-out plates, and to-goes? Check us out.
Good evening and welcome to the Let's Talk show here on Urban Cast. Tonight we're going to start our coverage on the Rapides Parish Police Jury's recent meeting where a 4-year ambulance contract was approved during a meeting called just a little over, 24 hours ago. I mean, it was recently set yesterday morning, and we're talking to the jurors, and tonight we have police juror Randy Wiggins with the discussion has raised a lot of questions across the parish about timing, transparency, and public involvement in this process. Joining us tonight again is Rapides Parish Police Juror Randy Wiggins, who actually earlier today voted against this measure. Randy, thank you for joining us this evening. And since this is your first time here on Urban Cast, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our folk over here, man?
Okay, Jack, I'll certainly do that. So you and I aren't strangers. It's not the first time we've had conversations, however. This is the first time for me to be on your show. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the opportunity that you would let us have some time to talk through this morning kind of what happened, because I think it's a very, very important meeting that we had, and a little disappointing, a little frustrating, but the decision's been made now, and I think we can learn from it and hopefully move forward and make sure that we get the ambulance service that the public deserves.
Certainly from a civic engagement standpoint, Randy, I would say, I hope we as a community begin to learn that it is really extremely important to pay attention to what our elected officials and other public officials are actually doing and staying engaged in that process. That's a really, really important. When you first learned this item would be handled in a special meeting on such a short notice there, what was your initial reaction to this whole process?
Well, honestly, I guess I thought, here we go again, because we got a very critical issue, and it's going to be sort of on a quick timetable, unusually known to the public, and it's like we're going to get there and we're going to have to vote on it pretty quickly. And what's the urgency? Why we have to do this all of a sudden, And so I was told that, well, the contract says this, and we have 30 days once they give a recommendation. Well, within that 30 days, and the contract was May the 12th. We have a meeting on the 4th. We could have done this on that meeting date. Regular meeting, everybody would expect it. People that have an interest in it could have come at a 3:30 meeting, and we could have had more time to discuss it. But this morning, the plan was just to have the president read the resolution and get someone to approve it, and second it, and then have discussion. Normally is the way we should do it. But we weren't really allowed to have much discussion. We were basically told that if we talked about any changes, and we weren't going to entertain any of that this morning. We were just there to vote up or down on it. And we weren't able to ask the why. What these recommendations are really setting us back. Several of us began because we went back to the old timetable of 80%, appliance percentage of the calls being delivered, and so we went back to less equipment. Got away with 2 ambulances, and the requirement of having a higher level of training and some of that. And so it's just, how did we get here? Was this decision made is what some of us want to know. And we weren't able to ask the why and have a discussion about it. I made a motion early to try to put us into a executive session so that we could have a great discussion amongst all of us about it, and we could get briefed on it completely, and was told, no, we're not going to do that. So there were three of us that wanted to, and the others already knew what the plan was going to be, and that's the way it had to go. Nobody else spoke. No one else got to speak about it. The vote was taken, passed, and adjourned. That's kind of the way it went.
Yeah, we did record that meeting. So for those of you guys who are listening to us out here tonight, if you go right back down our timeline earlier today, you can see the proceedings unedited from start to finish on how the meeting actually went down. So we like to try to make sure we are fully transparent over here at UrbanCast, not necessarily, giving a paraphrase of what happened. If folk want to see what happened, they have the right to go see what it is, and it's out there. So just go straight down our timeline, and you should be able to find it. You stated, Randy, the contract was scheduled for review around May the 12th, right?
Well, the contract anniversary was May the 12th, and the contract required that a report had to be given to us within 30 days of the contract renewal date. And then we had to respond within that same time period. So we got that this past week, in the last week, and then the meeting was called for us to come Monday, and have the meeting. So we really we had time to do it on the 4th and the 11th if we had to. We still would have been in contractual obligations.
Yeah. So you had time to do it on the 4th and 11th, and not to necessarily have. So from your perspective, what does that timeline say about how that decision was really handled from your perspective as a juror here in Rapides Parish?
Well, the executive or the ambulance committee met last week, and they went into an executive session for like an hour and 30 minutes. I don't think there's any discussion about any of these measures during the time. They came out and announced, this is what we're going to do. Now, Pafford was in that executive session with them. So apparently they were discussing some of those measures with those guys. And that's okay. I'm okay with if it's Pafford and they can provide these services that we're talking about. But I'm really concerned about when we had a committee that worked for over a year, and to do the selection process of how Pafford got there and to make the new contract. And we looked at, I didn't because I wasn't there then, but then they looked at Ouachita Parish as being the gold standard for ambulance services. How do they do it? What are their restrictions? What are their responsibilities? And so our process was modeled after Ouachita Parish. The 90% rule basically says we have responses is put in 3 categories: 8-minute, 12-minute, 20-minute. Okay, and you have to, if you get calls in those time zones or those response areas, then you have to respond within 8 minutes or 12 minutes or 20 minutes. And if you don't, then that counts against your percentage, your score. So if you're within 90%, and by the way, Pafford never did reach 90% of at any time. And there's supposed to be some repercussions from there, but we gave them a year of probationary to do. And our concern was, and what I've been talking to them about, we can't continue to approve these monthly reports and they're not meeting their contractual obligations. That falls back on the jury. If something were to happen, why did you guys let that go? And then I'm sure they'd say, well, the ambulance committee let it go, But really, it's the police jury's to let it go. The buck stops with us. We're the elected officials. We're the one that's supposed to make sure, and they are supposed to be advisory.
Mm-hmm.
And so today we found out that basically we can't make any changes. Every change we want to make can't be done just in a jury meeting, which I think is wrong. And we'll have more discussions about that. We're told that if you want to make a change, you got to go to the ambulance committee. You got to get the ambulance committee to approve it. And then they have to then bring it and present it to the jury. And at that time we can vote for it. Well, there's something not sensical about that to me. I mean, I understand the advisory piece. I understand they're going to do a lot of the work, but whenever it's all said and done, I think that we should be explaining the whys. How did you come about saying that we're going to do away with 2 units? Instead of 12, we're going to have 10. Or instead of 10 B units, we're going to have 8. And we're going to stage the other paramedics in places around the outlying areas. And so we're actually, if we dedicate those to DeVille and Boyce and Glenmore, we're going to have ambulances that are going to be out there with the highest trained people but they're locked out to serving the inner city. And my concern was that some of the worst, 700 something in our last report, events in the inner city, and they were like 85%. They didn't make the 90%. So how are we going to serve that better if we cut 2 units out and we station permanently all these other places with paramedics, and they're having those ambulances out in the outlying areas? So they say they can do it. We didn't get to ask, how are you going to do it? We have to refer back to the people who are professional that's picked on this ambulance committee. But I think it just behooves us as elected officials, and the buck stops with us again. We have to make that decision, vote up or down on it. Someone should have been here to explain all of that to us from the committee, and they weren't even there. And it was all handled in-house by jury leadership, and this is what we're going to do. Bam, 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 it's over. And I don't like operating that way, because it's the people's lives that we are dealing with. And it appeared that we were more concerned about making concessions to Pafford over and over and over and over again, so that they could meet our requirements instead of them meeting the contract's requirements.
Right. So in essence, and you're speaking to the guy in the back of the room. I'm coming up to speed, so I can imagine where you guys are, having to make these kind of decisions, and you don't have all of the information in front of you. So in essence, we had a scorecard. We lowered the threshold so that the folk could actually pass the threshold. And then the other thing we did, we talked about, the response time, particularly what I heard Mr. Scott talk about, not having the ability to meet some of the demands within the inner city. And we laxed those provisions that we had put in place. So, so again, for the people in the back of the room like me who really don't quite understand, you fixed the test for me.
It appears so. It appears so, and that's what our concern was. Now, I'm happy that the rural areas are taking place. This all came about because 30 years of an old contract with Acadian, and that contract did not serve us well. Okay, and so the service got more lax, and just didn't fit what we needed. Mm-hmm. And so our rural fire chiefs, basically, who probably are the salt of the earth in the community, and they're the people who got the most heart and soul invested in making sure people are safe there, kept complaining and kept complaining, and that brought about the change process a year and a half ago. Okay, so but it's almost like we've got that taken care of now, but we have to manage the rest of it, and where the biggest part of it we're not managing up to this point, this whole year with Pafford, was the 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 in-city transfers, the in-cities emergency responses. So, the 8-minute and the 12-minute range.
Mhm.
The 20-minute, they were pretty close. I think I may have hit that once, but basically, our concern has been that part of it. So, Jack, my approach to the whole thing is, again, I'm happy because my family, I grew up in a rural area and now they're better served. And my brother-in-law had a situation where because they were there, he's probably with us today. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's important. But we can't overlook a police juror. The problem with the police jury as a whole, as I see it, since I've been there now a year, you've got 9 members and each of us have 14,000 people apiece. And we have, that's our primary responsibility, but we also have a global responsibility to the whole parish on situations like this.
Right.
And we can't forget that.
Right.
And so we should have as much responsibility there. But what happens is those issues many times don't ever get really completely vetted through all of us. It's short-circuited, a leadership person making those decisions for us, and then we get a quick meeting call and have to come, without much information, be expected to vote on something.
Wow. Putting the timing aside, Randy, for the moment, what were your main concerns with the contract itself?
The way it's been liberalized, or the way it was initially?
Well, let's just say, we had some high standards in the contract, and as of this vote that you guys did today, we lowered those standards, for lack of better words. And you said we didn't need as much of equipment. Again, I might be misspeaking. I'm not into that part of the, that jargon out there, but what was your again, with the contract itself, if you had to put that in terms and tell the public out here, what were your concerns about that?
Okay, so why don't we back the truck up a little bit from the beginning of the contract and Parish came along and how we got there. Is that okay? Okay?
That's fine. That's fine. Come on, let's talk.
Okay. So a lot of upheaval in the rural areas. Acadians not, and across the board, Acadians just not meeting the demands.
Mm-hmm.
That's subject to interpretation. I think the old contract allowed them to do some things and take some liberties, and probably the new contract didn't. Mm-hmm. And so, and I think what I know is the contract that we ended up with, the state-of-the-art contract that we say this is going to be the contract for the future, we actually modeled from Ouachita Parish.
A gold standard, someone who
gold standard, Ouachita Parish, right?
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Right. Higher population.
Uh-huh.
Okay. More space, bigger parish. Okay. Mm-hmm. More territory to cover. Just coincidentally, guess who the provider is for Ouachita Parish, and they are meeting the 90% requirement. Go ahead, tell the public. It's your sponsor, Acadian.
All right, my sponsor. So you're gonna put that on out there for me?
Well, it just come across the screen. I just saw it right there.
Look, you just saw it across. That's okay. That's okay. I'm glad you helped me disclose that, Brandon. That's cool. And they're meeting in 90%.
Yes, in Ouachita Parish. So it can be done. It can be done. Okay. They've got a ambulance board. They've got an attorney that's real tight on the restrictions, and they're holding their feet to the fire, from what we understand.
Right.
No issues there. We've had difficulty. Pafford, rightly or wrongly, says that they built their plan, their RFP, and bid on the job based on information that they claim was given to them falsely from Acadian. I'm not so sure it wasn't just misinterpreted, or where they got it, or whatever, or what due diligence they had. That's neither here nor there, because the issue is really not Pafford or Acadian at this point. The issue is the contract, and to me, is, are we going to serve the public, you know, and make sure that they're safe? That's our responsibility as a police. True, that's one of the things that we have to be responsible for, is the public safety piece of it, right? And emergency services is certainly very, very important, and it comes under our purview. And so, so that contract then was put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was obvious pretty quickly that Pafford was not going to be able to hit those numbers. And so first they came back and asked us to let them use some EMSs to man some of those buses, some of those units. And then they ask us to let EMTs do second level emergencies. That's never been done in the parish. So that kind of watered that down. And the problem with that is a second level is, let's say you kind of show symptoms of a heart attack, but you haven't had one. And so, you know, you can get by, you can look and do the triage on it and try to see who do you need and try to make the best guess, and you send an ambulance out there. So if you've got an EMT on there, there is one ranking EMT highest rating that could give most of the treatment that's needed, but basically no EMT can give what a paramedic can do. Okay, so if that level 2 trauma basically or event escalates to a level 1 event while you're in transit, what do you do? Do you stop? Do you wait till a paramedic gets there? Or do you violate, or you not give them, or you hope that they make it till you get to the hospital? Those are the kind of things that we were concerned about.
Right.
When we heard about that. And then when they talked about so we allowed them to do that. Okay. We allowed them to do that. We've already liberalized the policy, get down. Then they asked us, the contract called for them to have 12 ambulances and paramedics 24/7 every day. So then they come back and ask us, could they not have that burden of doing the same type of personnel and ambulances 24/7, because the time of as they identified where the emergencies weren't in certain hours. And so instead of having equipment and people and payroll tied up at that point, maybe we are allowed to move them around to where we got more during a 9 to 5 kind of, you know, or a Sunday where we seem to have a lot more. So we allow them to do that. So we liberalize the contract there. And then they come back now, and what really got 2 or 3 of us, of course, Sean and Jay Scott knows especially those, because they're inner city people, right?
Right.
They are concerned about it because now they're saying, okay, we're going to, instead of having 10 B buses, if you will, got not paramedics in them, but you can have EMTs to do some of the lesser runs. And you're going to have 12 A buses that's going to have the paramedics in them. However, we're going to stationary, one in DeVille, one in Glenmora, one in Boyce, and I think another one in some other area that I'm not sure of. Okay. So now out of the 12, you've got 3 or 4 tied up in out of the draw. Basically, it appears that they have to stay there in those locations. They can't come in to pick up the inner city person. So now you, instead of having a mix of 8 or 10 or 12 close by and more centrally located, you got fewer to make it into the city calls, if you will. Mm-hmm. So we just had that discussion with Jay and Sean, and Ollie and Harris, and because this is what we're looking at basically. Again, I'm happy that we got the rural part of it covered, but the proof's going to be in the pudding is whether or not they're going to be able to handle and do better in the inner city with this new change. Now, when we went from 90 minutes, or 90%
mm-hmm.
requirement to now they backed that also down to 80%, just like it was when the Katie was there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what everybody was hollering about. We didn't tighten up anything. We went back to 80%. So if we go to 80%, and then we turn around and we do away with 2 ambulance units and some trained personnel there that you don't have, and don't need anymore, but could use if you had to somewhere, how are we going to do it? We may make the numbers at 80%. You may make the calls, most of them at 80%, but it just remains to be seen. Cutting those 2 units, that in itself is going to be a detriment because you got fewer. So you have to double over some people and maybe not have some things available. So that was our concern. But again, we didn't get a chance to talk about any of that.
Right. And for those of you guys who are still out there with us, the entire police jury meeting, special meeting that was held earlier today is actually on our website, not on our website, but on our Facebook page. Feel free to share it and what have you. So in the meeting today, Randy, you guys had to have felt that this meeting was already moving in a certain direction. I know me looking at the meeting and looking at how rigid it was kind of almost like it was just we're like little dominoes and we're just knocking the dominoes down. Mm-hmm. Did you guys feel that as well?
Sure. But it only mattered to 2 or 3 of us, because they knew. It was obviously that everybody kind of knew that you're expected to vote this way, and we don't want to have a discussion. We're going to have it early on this morning, and everybody knows the drill. All right,
right.
They know the drill. The ones that want to participate in that, they know the drill. So another thing that we brought up that we really wanted to do was. And we had this discussion when we made the contract a year ago, and I suggested that there is technology out there. See, one of the things is keeping score. Who determines when the clock should really start running?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Acadian had some of that in the past. Now Pafford, the 911 call comes in, 911 calls Pafford. Pafford determines when actually when they dispatch the unit. That's when the meter starts running. Well, what happens in the interim? We don't really see all that, So there is technology out there, third party, state of the art, that can track that completely. Take it out of the police jury's hands, take it out of the provider's hands. Third party, here's your report. This is how it goes, and it is what it is. So you've got an objective measure that you can tell that can't be FUBU'd, if that's a good word to use. I like you can't mess with it.
And the beauty of some of that software as well is if you go to places like I think Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, and I stand corrected, but where there are multiple providers that service that Dallas area, it works real beautiful. Even working with multiple providers and within that footprint.
Sure. So when we mentioned that, Sean, we talked about it before, and Sean brought it up. He got a chance to talk to the people. It's called I can't remember. First Watch. I think it's First Watch is the name of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Reputable company, proven company, not that expensive. And Sean suggested and wanted to make a motion that we require, since we're amending the contract now, we're in the middle of it, since we're amending the contract, that that be part of it. We were promised that the last time and it didn't happen. So he suggested, and he was told, no, I hear you, we'll talk about it, but we're going to vote on this. This is what we're going to vote on. This is what we're going to do. It would not have hurt anything at all to add that by vote of the jury. Add it in there. We do that all the time, and it could have been done. But leadership feels like we can't make a decision on our own unless we run it through the ambulance committee. So I don't think the ambulance committee would have had an issue with that at all. I don't think anyone should have an issue with that at all. Just makes good sense, right? If we're going to track it, you really shouldn't have the fox guard and hen house. You really should have, a third party that says, all right, because we're talking about seconds, minutes, basically can make a difference in life and death to someone. And we can't play with that. We need to do it at the very best and take advantage of all the technology that we can, and the training we can, and the programming we can, and the management of it that we can. We can't just, you know, do things as usual.
Well, I come from the IT arena, Randy, and I'll say, having automation in place and putting standards in places and policies in places. One of the things that systems allow you to do is to really put strong policies where you follow them from start to finish, and it's consistent across the board, and you don't have a lot of human intervention. And so at the end of that, you have the ability to really measure that data in a more accurate time frame. When it's lax, you have Jack deciding to start the clock when he walks out the door, and you have somebody else starting the clock when they get the call. You know what I mean? And so and being able to measure that at the end of the day is something extremely hard to do. Heavy. Randy, when you see things like this, and one of the things that we like to say over here at UrbanCast, we like to, it's really important to gain public trust. What's your thoughts about, how the public is potentially feeling about this situation, given the fact they didn't even have an opportunity to really put their 2 cents in? Yeah, the police jury did follow its policies as it related to a meeting notification. But let's just face it, did the public really get the opportunity to voice their concerns here?
Jack, the public is unhappy with government and elected officials, period. And I got to say, rightfully so, because of situations and things like this, because folks aren't stupid. I mean, they understand and they see and they sense. And there's a lot of ways to communicate these days, and a lot of information out there that we didn't have before. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to really be straightforward and up and aboard and transparent in what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think it's critical. And so whenever one person, one body, one group, whether it's on a local level, state level, or federal level, people don't sense that we're being transparent and doing everything we can, then right or wrong, we're not always going to agree, but we should at least be straightforward with what we're doing and why we're doing it, and vote our convictions. Don't try to, again, as I say, fugaboo the system so that we can bring about a desired result that may not bring about the real desired result for the people. May satisfy the political body or the political person, but it's really not the best for the people. And that's I think that's what we need to work toward.
And let me ask you one. There was a study that was done that floated this morning. Randy, can you speak a little bit about this study that supposedly the jury commissioned or something to that effect?
I don't know about it.
There was a report that the Rise report or something to.
Yeah, I just lost the name of Lark. The Lark
report.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit about that Lark report?
Yeah, from what I understand, because we just saw it kind of when it hit the screen, this last few days, sometime last week. Not sure exactly who commissioned the report. It had to do with the jury trying to get the information they needed from Acadian to find out whether or not they had hidden some information from us that would have made them pay higher or more fines. And so those guys in-house did their own deal and provided some documentation. And someone heard about this Lark company, which is a AI type company. And so you could give them all your data, they'll analyze and scrub it and come back and say, okay, here's your report. here's where, in that case, Acadian didn't meet the did not meet the standard, and here's where they didn't report this, and here's where they didn't pay, and here's how much they owe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know the validity of any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I find it's kind of interesting that it came out around the same time and how it did, and that we have it. However, I think Acadian sent out a rebuttal on that today, and that's all going to be tied up. And we're not officially in a lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
but it may head there at some point, if this continues the way it's going. So I think that was some fodder that maybe could be used to champion Pafford's case, I guess, maybe. To put more validity into, they weren't given the right information. Now, every company should do its due diligence to make sure, several different ways. I don't know what they did to that process, but they're saying it was because they didn't get the right information or had the right information from Acadian.
Okay. I tell you, Randy, I know you're busy today because, I know you traveled down to Baton Rouge. I think Sean McLaughlin, he's also was on his way. Hopefully he's made it down there. We might be back on a little live to talk with Sean this evening as well. And, the other thing I want to make sure that I extend is to any of the 9 jurors. If you want to talk about this whole process, let's talk about it. Let's kind of get an understanding of what's going on. Because right now, what I'm hearing is a lot of people were just a little lost or a lot lost as it relates to how the decisions were made and all of that kind of good stuff. And I invite everyone to come over and let's just sit down and talk about it and see if we can get a better understanding. Randy, before we get out of here, did you have anything else that you want to talk to your constituents? And that's all of the parish of Rapides. That you wanted to say or anything?
Yeah, I actually would. We had this big issue with carbon capture.
Okay.
And so I looked at that, and I tried. When I was running for office, everybody was talking about we need jobs, we need jobs, we need jobs, we need jobs. Okay. And so during that same time, we hear we're going to have the plant, $2.5 billion plant. It's going to be an old IP spot. And in the research, I found out you're looking at 109 jobs, around 70,000 per year, about 500 ancillary jobs around the plant, and 1,500, 1,800 construction for 2 to 3 years. So big opportunity for us, bigger than we've had in years and years and years. And so I think that's great. But then about the same time, we start hearing this carbon capture stuff, people coming back and talking about it's poison. It's not poison, but saying that they're going to poison the water and they're going to take your land to eminent domain, and a lot of misinformation about it. And so my approach was from the beginning, I hear what you're saying, and thanks for bringing all those issues to light. But my approach as an elected official is to see what all the people are thinking. But anytime you have an opportunity, then that opportunity, there are a couple of ways you look at it. One is what is the benefit of this opportunity? How do we maximize that benefit? What's the risk of this opportunity? How do we minimize or mitigate the risk? And you put it all together and find out, is it a good thing? Is it actually good for us or something we should kill? And I did a lot of study and I've done all that, and still I think the jury's somewhat out. But what I've discovered is right now there are no actionable, there are some permits on this Alexandria side of the river. There are none on the north side of the river. There are no pipelines except for a little short piece behind the plant that goes out across the river and onto an 8-inch pipeline to do the transfer the carbon to wherever it's going to be sequestered, if it's going to be sequestered, and we don't know that yet. But that's the way I approached it, and I tried to keep a level head about it, and I got attacked quite a bit about it in social media. It was beat up pretty heavily, and death threats and all that kind of stuff. And I just want people to know, the last thing I would want to do is do anything to hurt anyone, certainly anyone's child. I've got relatives in this parish. I've got a business in this parish. I've had a long time. I'm not going anywhere. But to have that happen and to think that somehow people are told, well, he's a bad guy because He was trying to do what he can for the community and have due diligence. And I made a motion in a police jury meeting that we should put it in the study group. Everybody was saying that's against it, saying we don't have transparency. I'm saying let's give them transparency. Let's have hearings. Let's look at all the concerns, and let's bring the experts in here. Let's try to come to a consensus about, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? That's all I want to do. But man, no, they just wanted us to outright say no, we don't want it. We don't want it. And but many people were saying, yes, we do want it. And so you hung in that whole situation. And I just want to say, if you have a question about it, I still love to hear what your concern is specifically. If it's water, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what they're doing to mitigate any of that. If it's pipeline or eminent domain, people were told they're going to take their house. They could just come and show up today and take your house. Well, that doesn't happen. That hasn't happened. We've had pipelines, CO2 pipelines, for decades in this state. The only time that I know of any eminent domain was taken was where it was an air situation where they had 8 or 10 heirs. All of them wanted to do it except one, and the only way they could sell their property is have the eminent domain exercised, and then they could go. They got their money. The heirs did. The other guy or lady got paid, and then the property went on. Practical speaking, if you got eminent domain, if it's a pipeline, if they come to a spot, they're not going to tie that up in court. They're just going to go around you. It's too easy to do that, and that's the practice in pipelining. And I grew up in pipelining. That's how my first job was in a natural gas pipeline company. Mm-hmm. So that's the only thing I'd like to say is that's the way I approached it. Why I approached it that way, and I couldn't find anything that would say that it's a poison. It's not a poison. I know we've been putting CO2 in the ground since the 80s, tons and tons and tons through enhanced oil recovery. It's put into an oil reservoir, and it pulls up the oil. They can recover their oil, and then when it pushes out, then the mixture gets to where it's more CO2 than oil. They cap the well, and they leave that in the ground. It's been that way for decades, and we haven't had any issues with water. None of us come bubbling up and hurt anyone. So the facts are out there, and if people really, really would talk to someone about it and let them just explain or show you, bring the receipts with it, and just allay these fears, because if it's good, if it turns out to be good, and Texas has been doing it for years, and by the way, Texas wants our area to forego it because they want it. They want the jobs, they want the benefit, and so if that's where we end up, that's fine. But it could be a great opportunity that we miss.
Right. Well, look, carbon capture is definitely something that's on tons of people mind here in the community. And again, the best way we can, move forward with this thing is to have these conversations about it, one conversation at a time. And that. Well, Randy, I truly appreciate you taking the time again to come and speak with us directly about this ambulance issue that we actually have in the community. And these are the decisions that affect emergency response and the lives across the parish. And you guys have a job, even though you represent that one section. When it comes to this contract, you have to look out, for all of us.
Yeah.
And it's really important that, we make sure, because, the uber urban areas and the uber rural areas have a lot in common, because a lot of times they are overlooked and their needs are overlooked. And it's something that we really need to really pay very close attention to as we move forward.
Yeah. And Jack, we've got a wonderful opportunity, I think, in our community for our community in the coming years. If we can just learn to work together, communicate, understand each other. We're not going to always agree, but let's agree to disagree and move forward and make the best of what we can do. In the end, not one person has all the answers. We much better massaging it and working together and synthesizing it and coming up with the best for everyone. You know, don't be afraid to talk to anyone about it. Don't tell people, just don't talk to them, because everybody should have an opportunity to, have an input, right? And
Absolutely.
so we need to work together.
Well, honestly, I think that's probably been our one of the things in the past. We think we understand what the other folks have, but we don't want to talk about it. And then we ultimately put in stuff in place that it don't work for the other guy. And then when the other guy starts to complain about it, we say he should shut up and don't complain. And we do every single thing that we can do to shut them up. But the best thing to do is to listen. And as we move forward, start listening a little bit more. We'll find out just how much we have in common, as opposed to what we have, what's different about us.
Yeah. And I ran for the police jury because the police jury is our executive and legislative branch of government. We touch everybody in the parish. Mm-hmm. And we need a government body that is going to be a catalyst for connecting us all and having those conversations. And, that's one of the things I'm striving for, and one of the things I'm a little bit frustrated about at this point. But anyway, I'm going to have high hopes and going to continue to do everything we can to make that happen, because we do need to communicate and work together to make this thing happen, and communicate and to commit to compete with other areas,
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, Mr. Wiggins, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Again, thank all you guys who hung in with us on this conversation tonight. Definitely want to say thank you to our silver sponsor, Acadian Ambulance. Without their support, conversations like this couldn't happen. So over here at UrbanCast, we really, truly appreciate it, because we could be talking about the ambulance issue tonight, but we might be talking about something else tomorrow. And, with their support, we can have these conversations in the community. And to all our business partners out there, we definitely want to say thank you to you. And again, to all of our listeners, you're the guys who make us tick. You're the guys who set the pace over here. We definitely thank you as well. Again, Randy, if you could just hang in there, I'm going to go ahead and end this stream, man.
This is Pastor Roger L. Green, Sr., pastor of the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. We're welcoming you to our worship services on Sunday morning. Sunday school begin at 8 a.m. Worship services begin at 9 a.m. Come and grow with us, a place of faith, family, and fellowship. We would love to have you. Come see us Sunday morning. We'll see you there. Be blessed.
Hey, did you know Long's Products is a family-owned janitorial supply with mops, brooms, trash bags, and they even have food service disposables, carry-out plates, and to-goes? Check us out.